The Violent Splinter paradigm is a tactical framework where a primary organization, referred to here as the main group, employs a smaller, more radical faction, the splinter, to execute acts of violence and disruption. This allows the main group to maintain plausible deniability and broad public support while advancing its agenda through the chaos generated by the splinter. Historically, this strategy has been used by revolutionary movements to weaken established systems by direct challenges to legitimacy and capability, testing new tactics, and radicalizing supporters, all while shielding the core leadership from direct accountability through layers of obfuscation. In the context of contemporary America, the riots that have erupted in cities like Los Angeles are not merely organic outbursts of an oppressed people. Evidence of coordination, such as pre-staged supplies, synchronized and open messaging, like in peaceful protest, flying the flags and symbols of foreign governments and named terrorist organizations, and the involvement of trained agitators, points to an orchestrated effort. The main group behind this violence harbors a revolutionary ideology that is communistic, aiming to dismantle Republican government and constitutional order, and globalist, seeking to erode national sovereignty in favor of supranational control. By leveraging these violent splinters, the group creates instability, which it hopes will pave the way for a radical restructuring of American governance in one of two ways: either submit passively and succumb to escalating violent revolution, or react by striking back and watch the captured institutions provide cover for the main group to advance in public opinion, legislation, jurisprudence, and institutional hegemony. The damned if you do, damned if you don't is a feature, not a bug, of dialectical political warfare. The United States Constitution establishes a republican form of government as guaranteed in Article 4, Section 4, where the people elect representatives to govern on their behalf. This system is designed to balance majority rule with minority rights, ensuring deliberate decision-making and adherence to the rule of law. It stands in stark contrast to mobbish democracy, where direct majority rule devolves into chaos, trampling individual liberties and fostering tyranny by the masses, creating spoils of oppression to be fought over by various special interests, and, finally, succumbing to dictatorship. The violent splinter paradigm directly assaults this republican framework. By inciting riots and amplifying unrest, the main group seeks to erode the institutions that underpin representative governance, courts, legislatures, and law enforcement. The resulting disorder mimics the conditions of mobbish democracy, where raw emotion and street-level power supersede constitutional processes. This chaos is a deliberate stepping stone toward enabling authoritarianism, as it creates a crisis that the main group can exploit to justify imposing a new, centralized order and the rise of a new class of oligarchs. The Founding Fathers, wary of such threats, crafted the Constitution to prevent exactly this kind of destabilization, emphasizing a structured government over the whims of the mob. A critical component of the violent splinter paradigm is the use of controlled opposition, including pseudo-right actors who appear to oppose the main group but secretly serve its ends. These actors, often masquerading as nationalists or populists, exacerbate racial tensions and promote divisive rhetoric, deepening societal fractures aimed towards preventing the broad right from coalescing for their own existential defense. For example, groups that amplify racist narratives or stage provocative demonstrations contribute to the perception of widespread racial hatreds and bigotry, which the main group then leverages to justify its revolutionary agenda, resulting in your own colorblind, Christian or meritocratic views being linked to white nationalism, just as the Biden regime did in order to justify your persecution. This tactic mirrors historical communist strategies, where factions were manipulated to create false dichotomies while advancing a singular goal. In America today, these pseudo-right actors polarize the public, distract from the main group's true intentions, and undermine the unity required to defend the constitutional order. By framing all dissent as extremist, the main group delegitimizes genuine opposition, further weakening the republic's resilience. The Founding Fathers recognized the dangers of internal subversion and established legal mechanisms to protect the republic. Early American laws addressing treason, sedition, conspiracy, and high crimes provide a foundation for holding the actors behind the violent splinter paradigm accountable. Treason, as defined in Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution, is levying war against the United States or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Orchestrating riots with the intent to destabilize the government is the levying of war, especially if it's tied to a broader revolutionary plot for the overthrow of American government. The active participation of agents from the Chinese Communist Party, Cuba, the PFLP, Hamas, and others could, in fact, legitimately support this charge. Sedition, the idea itself, has always been a bit fraught, but it still stands as a valid and actionable legal principle. The Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, passed during a time of early American anxiety about internal threats, were widely seen as unconstitutional because they infringed on the First Amendment's protection of free speech and press. These laws made it a crime to criticize the government, stifling dissent in ways that just didn't sit right with our core constitutional values. Their eventual repeal highlighted the dangers of overly broad restrictions on expression and cemented them as a cautionary tale. Still, while those acts were flawed, the broader concept of sedition, inciting rebellion or undermining lawful authority, remains a precise and constitutionally sound framework. In today's law, sedition is defined much more narrowly, aiming to address real threats without trampling on protected rights. For example, Title 18, United States Code, Section 2384, the Seditious Conspiracy Statute, defines the offence as two or more people conspiring to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to oppose by force the authority thereof. If that sounds exactly like what's happening when mobs resist, ambush and attack federal officers involved in immigration enforcement, that's because it really is, to the letter, a seditious conspiracy, and it should be prosecuted and persecuted as such. Conspiracy and high crimes. These broader categories cover plots to overthrow the government or corrupt its institutions. They offer a kind of flexibility that's needed to address complex, multi-actor threats. When we apply these principles today, the actors behind the violent splinter paradigm, both the main group and its splinters, should actually face prosecution if evidence shows intent to overthrow the constitutional government or aid its enemies. For example, funding rioters, training agitators, or even collaborating with foreign entities opposed to United States sovereignty should trigger these charges. The main group's goals are, unmistakably, revolutionary. They aim to dismantle the American Republican system and subordinate it to a communistic, globalist regime. Drawing from Marxist tactics, like Mao Zedong's emphasis on chaos as a precursor to revolution, the group uses riots to break down existing power structures. This aligns with communistic ideals of abolishing private property and representative governance, all in favor of collectivism and centralized control. And the globalist dimension goes even further, seeking to subordinate United States sovereignty to international frameworks, which erodes the Constitution's authority. So the riots serve as both a weapon and a signal, testing the government's resolve, while at the same time radicalizing segments of the population. By framing their actions as responses to systemic failures and right-wing tyranny, the main group cloaks its ideological aims of revolution in the language of reform and justice, making it harder to discern the deeper threat to the republic. Strategies to effect repressive tolerance by bringing the hammer of law down on all right-wing violence, such as self-defense against leftist riots, should be met with jury nullification, legislation towards more permissive rules of engagement for defense against mobs, pressure on prosecutors to not bring charges against the right where force was even remotely reasonable, and publicly building the case for strong charges against mob participants and legislation to that end. Other fruitful avenues might include legalization of insurance, providing high-level defense against criminal charges stemming from politically charged violence, selective targeting of enemy command and control assets and funding, official recognition of persons engaged in violence or public coercion under certain circumstances, such as under a foreign or terrorist flag, as enemy combatants eligible to be engaged at will, and utilization of letters of marque and reprisal for enemy assets. Ultimately, the final analysis finds that the left, broadly, must become understood, socially, academically, legally, and militarily, as what it truly is: a revolutionary counterstate and insurgency against America's highest law and her citizens. This is the standard by which a serious person should be assessed, and failing it, dismissed as unserious and unfit to lead. The revolution will never be defeated, nor our republic safe, until we call a thing by its proper name and align that notorious proper name with the correct and good penalties prescribed by law. The Constitution, with its emphasis on representative governance and the rule of law, remains the Republic's strongest defense. Early American legal theories provide tools to confront these actors, but their application requires vigilance, courage, and a commitment to restore the Republic. Americans must recognize this threat for what it is: a deliberate assault on their system of government, and unite to protect the principles that have sustained the nation for over 2 centuries. Only through such resolve can the Republic endure against the forces seeking its destruction. Counterspell Group.